Okay, James, we love this segment. Questions from our devoted listeners all around the globe. The first one is from Jack, who's in Erie, Pennsylvania, but he's worried about his neighboring state of Ohio. And I'm going to slightly change his question because he says, why can't the Democrats ever win in Ohio since 2000? They actually did. Obama won a couple times. But I think his point is right. Compared to most of the Midwestern states, Michigan and Pennsylvania, which to join them, Ohio is a much tougher slog for Democrats. Trump won there by, I think, 9 points, while Biden was carrying Michigan and Pennsylvania. Why is Ohio so tough?
My guess is that you probably have a disproportionately high number of white non-college that generally, drives that number. And the Republican Party's traditionally been pretty strong in Ohio. I mean, it is probably some hangover from that. They were very good at organizing, and there's a real Republican tradition in Ohio that you don't have as much in Pennsylvania or even Michigan or Wisconsin, if you will. So, I mean, I guess a lot of that carries over. And the Democrats, we've not offered up. I mean, Sherrod Brown proved that you can be a Democrat and win a statewide election in Ohio. And I just hope that as we go through this process and for this 2022 open seat, that we pick, and I don't know who it is, and we'll know as we go forward, we pick the strongest possible general election candidate that we can come up with. And it's not a purple state, it's a pink state. But we would have said the same thing about Georgia, and things change, and let's see where this thing ends up in 2022. But I think we're going to be back to there. But there's some things that work against us in Ohio that maybe don't work as bad against us.
Yeah, it does go back to their organizing, all the way back to Ray Bliss and Jim Rhodes. But I remember the state chair and Ohio Democratic state chair, wonderful guy named David Pepper, told me every election night, he gets blue envy when he looks at Pennsylvania. And I said, why? He said, all those blue suburbs. We don't have blue suburbs in Ohio. Now, they have a few, but nothing like they do in Pennsylvania. And that's but you're right. Sherrod Brown has proven, time and time again that you can win out there, and if they can clone a Sherrod Brown or someone with that kind of appeal, both to whatever blue suburbs they have, the inner city, and some of those working class, non-college educated whites, particularly in southeastern Ohio, you can win that race. So, but it's a good question, Jack. And you can hope that
I think the cultural arrogance of a lot of Democrats just hurts us. People agree. People agree with us. If you go through every issue, from the minimum wage to climate to road, I can't literally think of an issue where people don't side with the Democratic point of view.
And you're right. And that's what Sherrod Brown clearly doesn't convey, because he doesn't have any cultural arrogance.
No.
Hey, James, our next question is from Lamas in Syria. And she says that we were kind enough to read her email before. Someone must send her our podcast. But this time she wants to know, she's asking about the Muslim ban. She said, I want to bring my kids to visit the United States for so long. After the COVID-19 crisis is over, is it possible to apply for a visa yet, or still impossible for Syrians? Here's what I understand. Biden has lifted the Muslim ban, but it takes a while to work through some of the implementation of that and some of the particulars, and they're still going to have tests. But I think, Lamas, I would advise you to start whenever you can to apply, and it may be within a matter of months. If COVID is at least in a manageable state, that you'll be able to do that. I hope so.
Well, I tell you, if you told me places that I'm 76, I haven't been and I really want to go to, Damascus would be in the top 3. And my dream is, I hope you can get to the United States, because I know personally you had a lot to offer, but I would love to go to Syria and have lunch with you. And I love the climate in the Mideast. I actually like the food. I've been to Jordan, and I'm sure it's not the the produce there is just out of this world. I've been to Israel a lot. So I hope you can come to the United States one day before I die. I'd love to go to Syria and sit outdoors in your wonderful climate and eat a lot of that
I
fresh
love that
food.
idea, James. Maybe we can persuade Simon to let us do a podcast from
Yes,
from
from
uh, from
Damascus.
Damascus if that awful
And,
regime will ever.
yeah, I'm so
And I
touched
just
and
went there.
tickled.
I was at
Yeah,
a stopover coming back from Egypt. So the only time I've been in Syria was at the airport for about an hour. But I'm with you. I'd love to see it. Brian in Long Island, New York. I'm going to, James, ask you to take the view that lawsuits from both Smartmatic and Dominion are significant as possible checks on irresponsible conspiracy and true fake news journalism and legal advocacy, especially if there are significant damages. What are your thoughts on their possible effects and whether private citizen Donald Trump should or could be brought into them as a defendant?
well, I'll put it this way: we know some awfully good lawyers. I can't tell you their names, but their initials are Walter Dellinger and Seth Waxman, and both of them, as I appreciate it, think that this lawsuit it has some merit. And one of the things I did my class last night at LSU on this is Smartmatic a public figure? I don't want to get too into it. I'm not a First Amendment lawyer by any stretch of the imagination, but I think we could agree with our limited legal knowledge that the standard is much different if you're not a public figure than you are a public figure. And I think that Smartmatic, particularly in Dominion to some extent, have a good argument that they're not public figures.
Uh,
And the kind of excruciating standard that exists in the famous case called New York Times versus Sullivan, reckless disregard for the facts and actual malice, may not apply to them. I think the people going to settle this for it probably won't go to trial, but this is going to be settled for something more than a nuisance settlement.
Hey, thanks for listening to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. Don't forget to send your questions for us by email to politicswarroom@gmail.com or tweet them for next week's show at Politicon. And remember to check out the links to our sponsors in the show notes. We deeply thank you for supporting them. It's what makes this podcast happen. To keep up with us every week, subscribe to Politics War Room on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen. Please rate the show with a 5-star review. We'll be back next week to analyze what the Senate did in the trial of Donald J. Trump, second trial, impeachment trial, and another show as we continue our war room planning in 2021.